On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Christian Yang. He is the engineering manager of software infrastructure at Zoox. We're going to be talking about a really interesting topic because it fits within the context of what Christian is responsible for. And we're talking about building predictable roadmaps. He is obviously working for an R&D based organization, a lot of innovation. He's going to be talking about how to time box, create feedback loops, how the cross-functional mission is really integral to how the team operates over there. I'm really excited to talk to Christian, and thank you for being on.
Yeah, Amir, thanks so much for having me. Really excited to talk today.
Absolutely. So two things I always ask. One is let everyone know what Zoox does, but just to give us some context. And then in your role as an engineering manager of the software infrastructure, give us an idea of what you're responsible for.
Yeah, for sure. So Zoox is an autonomous robotaxi company. We're aiming to bring mobility as a service to dense urban environments in some of our public locations like San Francisco. And the interesting thing about it that makes it a super cross-functional project is we're building a purpose-built vehicle from the ground up for the AI to drive. And so riders can really just relax and have a safe transportation experience. As for myself, I'm as you mentioned, engineering manager for two of the infrastructure teams and the software division at Zoox. The first team is high performance compute. So we are the GPU and CPU infrastructure that powers all of the R&D workloads at Zoox. For example, anything from machine learning to simulation to data pipelining, or even just general compute. We provision servers in our data centers and across the globe in the cloud to enable that to happen. And the second team is 3D run visualization. So all the results from the vehicle actually going out and the AI teams, making that easy to view in the browser. So, very cross-functional in nature, very exciting high growth times for Zoox. And with that, a lot of challenges on the management and leadership side that I'm excited to discuss with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously, as a company that's not just building, but you guys are innovating. And obviously, some of what we're going to talk about is the roadmap and some of the challenges that go into that and kind of how you handle that. I guess at the top level, maybe just to give everyone a sense of how your team is run, maybe we could just start there and then talk about some of the roadmap concepts after that.
Yeah, definitely. So, as I mentioned, my teams are infrastructure teams. So they are service teams that work with almost everybody in the organization to enable their workloads. So we work with the different AI teams, perception, prediction, and planner to work on core AI problems to enable them. We work with the operational teams to make sure the vehicle drives well and can get out there and do its thing. And anywhere in between. So we both create products and platforms and services that everybody else can use. We also provide direct support. We take a very customer-centric view to how we work with other teams. Almost like consultants, although that's kind of a taboo word in software engineering. But we really make it our goal to collaborate and solve whatever the folks much smarter than I need to solve at Zoox.
And I guess maybe we can actually back into the roadmap discussion because you touched on something about the cross-functional nature. Obviously, you guys are service-oriented within the company and you're collaborating with other teams. Talk about that cross-functional kind of functionality that happens within the various teams you just kind of described.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe 2 points that come to mind around that. One, it's kind of in nature of Zoox and its mission. We call that one Zoox, one mission. We're all kind of pointed at that North Star of getting this vehicle out there, creating a transformational driving experience. So that's really nice, compared to maybe a organization where they have different focuses. We kind of by nature know the value of everybody collaborating together, and it's kind of necessary. We're trying to build a car from the ground up. We need expertise in a variety of areas. Maybe the second point more directly related to my teams. Like I mentioned, we're an infrastructure org. We're this horizontal service layer. And so I think one thing I found really helpful for us is to look at ourselves as enablers. And you might ask, hey, isn't that obvious? Shouldn't we all be enablers? I think a perhaps pain point for kind of horizontal service teams that I've seen is that sometimes they can adopt the role as gatekeepers. We want infrastructure that is scalable, stable, doesn't break down, solves resource constraints, and that kind of can lend to more of a scarcity mindset where we tell people, hey, to do this, we need a lot of due diligence. Hey, maybe we can do something cheaper or more efficiently. But since we are in this innovative mission for Zoox, and we're in this for the long run, we really want to innovate here. We're not trying to overly optimize at this stage. Taking on that mindset of being enablers to collaborate with the teams to see, hey, how can they get more? I mean, how can they scale out more? How can they get the resources they need? Of course, in a responsible way with guardrails in place, but kind of taking this mindset, I think, builds good engagement with the teams. Then they're really looking at us as a partner. They can help us steer our roadmap, help us prioritize what's important and what's really impacting them, rather than a back and forth of, we want this, but, our team is tasked with kind of keeping the budget down or keeping them resource constrained, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess when you're kind of talking about, being the enabler, not being the impediment, right? Obviously, that's kind of what your goal is. You don't want to have to say we can't. When you're backing into your roadmap and you're talking to these various teams, it's very obviously highly cross-functional. You're building, an autonomous vehicle from the ground up. I mean, it's a different product than most people probably have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Your roadmaps, I mean, I'm afraid to call it fluid, but it can't be because, there's milestones, there's dependencies, other teams are waiting on what you guys are building. But, how flexible is your roadmap? And I guess that's maybe a good starting point to understand, how you build that roadmap.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the $1 million question. We are no longer a science experiment. We're real. We're here to stay. We're starting to really move towards go-to-market. And so how do we find that balance point between still innovating and figuring out the unknowns, but providing some confidence in timelines and roadmaps? So yeah, one thing I think that my teams have found really effective is a time boxing approach. Because certainly we want to create room for innovation, but we can't go off into the woods for indeterminate amount of time, years or whatnot, without a defined kind of goalpost. So with time boxing, I think that gives us some capped flexibility on how much we explore. A couple of ways we do that. For research, we do research sprints. We usually cap them around, for my teams, perhaps 8 weeks. So that kind of gives some time to do some scoping, gives some time to do some iteration, gives some time then to plan the next steps. So then you can really adapt in stepwise increments. Towards the end, you can say, hey, this was a great research effort. Let's keep going. Or, hey, maybe it wasn't quite the right approach. So we can pivot a little bit. I guess another point that ties into the cross-functional collaboration, which is pretty interesting. We found out that time boxing actually enables cross-functional collaboration a lot better. One example of how that's manifested is with rotational engineering programs. So like I mentioned, infrastructure is a horizontal service teams. And one challenge I've kind of seen with that is kind of a walled garden setup that emerges where the service team is trying to provide these baseline capabilities. They're not super in tune with what the users are doing. And likewise, the users, they're specialists in their domains, in their AI domains. They don't quite as know what the infrastructure is doing underneath the hood. And so that leads to maybe suboptimal collaboration. So, as Zoox, along the theme of collaboration, we're trying to break down the walled garden, break down those silos, and really get the teams working closer together. And time boxing, we found, is a good way to do that. So we've had a lot of success with infrastructure engineers actually rotating onto the AI teams, the perception, prediction planner teams, simulation teams as well. And so then for a defined period, they can kind of deep dive, gain some domain knowledge, have it time boxed. And so then afterwards, bring it back into the fold. And so kind of that has really supercharged our approach to innovating, but having some guardrails around it.
Interesting. I guess just to go back to what you mentioned, so setting up a 8-week exploratory sprint to give somebody a chance to go look at innovation and kind of test some ideas out. When somebody comes back and they're done doing what they had to do, how does the team decide should they keep going? Like, what are you guys hoping to see in terms of progress and be able to validate, hey, let's spend some more time there? Obviously, you've time boxed it to the 8 weeks, but to go past that, what does somebody need to see?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the two ways we approach that, of course, we want to be metrics driven. We want to, as much as possible, use data to influence our decisions. So typically defining success metrics up front. For infrastructure, a lot of those are related to scalability and stability. So performance increases both vertically and horizontally. Stability as defined by not just moving the needle on new stuff, but prevention. I think especially for infrastructure orgs, but also I would say in general, making sure that you take a mindset of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, to use an old cliche. But if we say focus on a testing type initiative, an automation type initiative, did that actually prevent, or could that have prevented known issues or regressions we've seen in the past? So of course, there's the metric side of it. I guess related to how we are very cross-functional in nature, by breaking down that walled garden with our customers, I think that can actually feed into where we steer the ship after a particular sprint. I think as enablers, we are really in service of the other teams. And so if we know from their feedback, from their metrics, from the relationship we've established that we've really helped them, that helps us know if we should focus more with that partner in the future.
That's interesting. And I guess you're talking about the cross, functional, nature of how you guys work. When you're looking at bringing some of that information back to the team and the managers are responsible for helping onboard what that knowledge is, how do they help facilitate that? Because I guess, maybe they haven't been exposed to an area and somebody's coming back to the team with additional information. How does that information get assimilated back into the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think where that manifests the most is in a simple way, sharing the use cases. So for example, something necessary for Zoox is a large amount of simulation, ensuring that for whatever use case, for example, for safety, that we have an adequate amount of simulation there. So that would impact my teams as an infrastructure org of how do we enable that level of simulation? How do we get from 10 to 100x to 1000x? And so understanding the resource demand can help us really shape our roadmap. Understanding exactly where their pain points and stability are. Is it with the compute systems, or is it with the storage systems, or is it with the job scheduling system, or any myriad component of our services? That can help us really understand what should we focus on in the future in terms of a roadmap. So yeah, definitely use cases. Otherwise, you're kind of left guessing, and you might end up building something that hits all your target metrics, but doesn't actually solve a customer use case. And I think that's something we definitely want to avoid. We have enough of a task getting the vehicle running, so we need to make sure all of our innovation is focused towards the right things.
And I guess when you're looking at the feedback loop, back into the team, back into the roadmap, I guess, you've mentioned, like that service oriented mindset. I guess, how does that feedback loop, get incorporated into the roadmap? And, I guess, I don't know if the duration, maybe it affects the duration of your sprints as well, or maybe you guys have made adjustments to accommodate more feedback as projects are going, deeper.
Yeah, great question. Okay, I kind of see what you're talking about. So I think the feedback loop manifests on the roadmap in a couple ways. So broadly speaking, after a stint with a partner team, we end up with the results of what we did and a lot of requests. And some of those tend to be customer specific. You really help them solve one of their specific use cases, or something that can be abstracted as a general multi-customer broad use case. And so in the sense of time boxing on a broader scale, we've kind of time boxed these rotational programs. Another set of how we roughly divide our time is what are broader platform features. So, say we go out to our simulation team, they have some micro improvements around a specific simulation that we can do. That's great to know. But we might also learn that our job scheduling system, if it had a better sense of how to prioritize workloads in general, that's a good customer-driven platform-wide roadmap item that we can fold into our core product roadmap. So I would say our roadmap is roughly divided into one-to-one customer servicing at maybe call it 30% or so, and then another 40 to 50% core platform development to make sure we're building something that everybody can take advantage of, and then the last 20% ongoing support. Since we are that service team, you'll want to provide a quick time to response, a good incidents response process.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking, because I think, you've mentioned, obviously, you guys are more the horizontal service provider. And obviously there seems to be, within the product you're building, one Zoox, it's a tight collaboration. When you're kind of sitting back, obviously we're talking about the roadmap, but if we were to just kind of think forward for a second and go, okay, well, you're executing on the roadmap. When you're looking at, let's say, the ROI the team is creating, obviously as a service provider, it's a little bit more difficult to maybe pinpoint because you're helping so many different areas. How does that work? Or how do you view that when you're looking at the relationship of, what the team's executing on based on that roadmap?
Maybe I would answer that from first a values perspective and then how it plays out. I think luckily for us, we have pretty core, enduring, I call them pillars, objectives, or values, one of those words. Mm-hmm. But I would say our top three, scale, stability, probably nothing too controversial with those. And then one I kind of like to call focused innovation to really kind of drive our roadmap decisions. And I guess what I mean by that is don't reinvent the wheel when we don't have to. Zoox in general, we're trying to literally reinvent a new type of wheel for our vehicle. But when we don't have to, don't try to recreate something and really focus on the right things to innovate. I think what sometimes happens is the desire to build something in-house. One example of that, one aspect of my HPC team is scheduling. And we happen to use an open source scheduler. This is public. We actually just released a case study on this, but we use the open source Slurm scheduler. And every so often, people will come to us or we'll think internally, hey, shouldn't we have our own scheduler? We'll have complete control over it. We can make whatever tweaks we want. But to your point on ROI, I think this guiding principle really forces us to ask the question of, hey, is this really the best place we should be spending our time on? Time is our most valuable asset, and is the ROI there to really rebuild an existing component from scratch? And I think when we put into that lens, the very well-intentioned thought sometimes of rebuilding something seems it becomes a lot more clear that that's not the best way to spend our time. And so that connecting that with our tight collaboration cycles with our customers can really help us focus on what exactly is their problem, our customers' biggest pain points to solve.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you have a mix of a deep science to guide you, but a bit of art to be able to maneuver with managing the time boxing relationship, the cross-functional nature. It sounds like a heck of a balancing act, and it sounds like it's a really cool place to work. So I definitely appreciate you being on and sharing. I wish I could keep chatting with you and keep diving in, but I know you got to get back to it. If somebody wants to reach out and touch base with anything you've mentioned or talked about, is LinkedIn a good place, or how would somebody want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, definitely. LinkedIn would be a great place to reach me. I would like to do a quick plug that Zoox is hiring on all cylinders. My teams, the AI teams are across the board. Even if you don't have core AI or self-driving experience, that's A-okay. Like I said, we're very cross-functional in nature. People work together, grow that domain expertise. And we're just looking for smart, passionate people to help us on our mission.
Absolutely. Yeah. If somebody wants to reach out to Christian, more questions about joining his team, hit him up. It sounds like they're doing some cool stuff. Again, Christian, thanks for being on.
Thanks so much for having me, Amir. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's it for this episode. We'll be back again, different guests, different topic. And until then, I always ask for two things. One, if the podcast is useful, share it. That's how it's been growing. So I thank everyone that does that every week. And secondly, if you want me to talk about a specific topic, please reach out to me, let me know, and I'll do my best. Until next time, goodbye.